Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm Kristi Lowe, I'm your host, and I am so glad you were back with us again this week. If you have been following along and then you've been listening to the past couple of weeks, we've started talking about control and the subject of just that need to control situations. And if you have come back for the third week, either you are just a glutton for punishment or this is really starting to work on you and affect change inside of you. I know it is affecting me. It is affecting some of my thought processes. It is stepping on my toes. It's getting under my skin. And usually that's when I know that the Lord is up to something, is when I can't stop thinking about something he's showing me or something he's trying to get my attention about. And this is definitely one of those things, and I want to say this too, before we dive in. Last week, we talked about feeling out of control, and I shared with you guys some very raw stuff about what was been going on with my family. My dad had a heart attack. It's been about 10 days ago as I'm recording this, 12 days ago. I don't know. Time is now, I don't know. My days are all sorts of messed up, but my dad had a heart attack a little over a week and a half ago. And he had triple bypass surgery last week. And y'all, it went really well. He is heading to a rehab hospital where he's going to spend a couple of weeks just getting stronger and trying to get some strength and health back into his life. And so thank you guys so much for praying for him. For those of you who have just reached out and the kindness that you have all extended to my family, I'm just grateful. And thank you too, just for letting me be myself and really raw last week. And I told y'all last week, and I mean this, there are no coincidences. The Lord knew that my dad was going to have a heart attack, a week after I started talking about the need to be in control and all of the ramifications of that. So this does not come as a surprise to the Lord. And so that gives me a lot of comfort. We're talking today. We're going to keep going today. I told y'all at the beginning of the series that I'm not going to stop until the Lord says we're done. Okay. And he brought something to my attention through one of my morning readings. This is really what has prompted all of this, and it's been stirring in me. It's what's prompted this whole series. And so if you will just indulge me, I want to dive in today to this scripture because I think it's going to absolutely change the trajectory and how we see control and manipulation. Okay. So if you have a Bible and you want to read along with me, I'm reading from the NIV version in 2 Samuel chapter 11. And I'm just going to start at the beginning, and then we're going to kind of take a break and talk about things and let's just dive in. Okay. So 2 Samuel 11 starts in the beginning. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab with all the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. That's a key. Hold on to that, okay? One evening, David got up from his bed, walked around on the roof of the palace, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing. We know how this is going to go. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. She had purified herself from her uncleanliness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David, saying, "I am pregnant." Let's stop right there, okay? We have a problem. We have a problem. David has a problem here. He has just found out that Bathsheba is pregnant. And, this could have gone two ways. The rest of this story that I'm about to read to you would have been so boring if he had not made the decision that he made. Let's see what happens here, okay? So David has just found out she's pregnant. He's got a problem. So in verse 6, it says, so David sent this word to Joab. Joab has gone out into the field with all the king's men, mind you. And he says, "Send me Uriah, Bathsheba's husband." And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. That's so nice of him to just check on Joab, see how he's doing. Then David said to Uriah, "Go to your house and wash your feet." So he's trying to send him home. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go to his master's house. We have a problem. David has a problem. You see, what David had decided was, if I bring Uriah home, Uriah will sleep with his wife, and then Uriah will be, quote unquote, be the father of this child, which is really skewed thinking, because Bathsheba would always know that this was not Uriah's child, but that's neither here nor there. However, David is trying to cover this up, so he thinks that bringing Uriah home will solve this problem, when in reality it really doesn't. But that's okay, David. You're not thinking here. You're not thinking clearly if you want to know the real truth. However, let's continue. We see Uriah comes home, but Uriah comes to David, but Uriah does not go home. So David is now in a pickle. What does he do? He has a choice, y'all. He has a choice. He still could have owned it. He still could have, he did not have to keep going. But then he says, when David was told Uriah did not go home, he asked him, why? He asked him, haven't you just come from a distance? Why didn't you go home? Why didn't you go see your wife? Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my master Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the fields. How could I go to my house and eat and drink and lie with my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing. Uriah is a good man here. He is extremely loyal to David. So David said to him, okay, stay one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David got him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out, and he slept on the mat outside among his master's servants. He did not go home. I don't know who said it, but I've heard the quote that anything you go outside of God's will to get, you've got to stay out of God's will to keep. And that hits home here, because our need to control the narrative needs fuel. Our need to control begets need to control. I really just wanted to say begets, y'all. Let's just be real. But like, you need control, but you need fuel. It's not going to fuel itself. The truth fuels itself. Lying and manipulating, that requires more energy and more fuel to keep it alive. But he could have owned it. Like, we always have a choice, right? We always have a choice. At the point when we realize we have made a mistake, we always have a choice. We can own it, or we can cover it up. We can own it, or we can manipulate the situation to make us not look quite so bad. We can own it, or we can try to control it and control what happens because of what we've done. David is feeling probably pretty out of control here. And as you and I talked about last week, when you're feeling out of control, you have the choice. You can either trust and take ownership of your actions, or you've got to continue to fuel this. And y'all, this is us so often when we've made a mistake, is it not? When we're trying to control something and it's not going our way, and our first attempt at controlling this doesn't work. So what do? Do we go the other way or come to our senses? No, apparently we don't. And in David's case, he makes the situation even worse. Watch what he does. I'm going to pick up in verse 14. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. So Uriah has a note from the king that he is carrying back to Joab. And this is what the letter says. Put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die. You know, it's easy to read stories and kind of see them from a distance. But if you let God's word kind of come in and sit with you and get a little bit closer, what if Uriah was your brother? Or what if you were Uriah? What if you were Uriah with that note and you hand Joab that letter and you have no idea that it says that the king who has just entertained you for 2 days is sending you to the front line to ensure your death? And he's doing so not because you have done anything wrong. He's doing so because he has had an affair with your wife, and now he's trying to cover it up. And Uriah's life is now going to be taken because of somebody else's indiscretion. And the thing about controlling and being controlling is that control and manipulation, any of that sort of thing, it always, control and manipulation always value the outcome over the relationship or the person. That every time. Anytime we begin to focus on controlling something, more often than not, the collateral damage is going to be the person or the people we have to step on to get our way. Control can become all-consuming. Control can start out as just a little thing we hope will just cover up one little thing, or a little white lie. We've all told white lies. But white lies are still really dark and have the propensity to become big lies. There's no such thing as a little white lie. Because one lie leads to another. One act of control ultimately leads to another. And when we are trying to steer things or interfere with things that we had no business doing, when we're taking things or when we are taking things into our own hands, the problem is that when we begin to control and manipulate things, our ability to see the big picture gets smaller and smaller and smaller until all we can see is that little bitty slice of what we want to happen. That one thing. When our vision gets so skewed, we get so off course. And please tell me I am not alone here. We have all had these points where we have found ourselves off track. We have let something get bigger than you ever thought that it would. And sometimes it starts out innocently, but then it just mushrooms. In our pride, if we don't humble ourselves, the ramifications of control and manipulation are going to be the biggest regrets of our lives. I can tell you some of the biggest things I regret in my life are the times when I did not do or say the right thing, when I should have done the thing that I should have done. And instead, I tried to control the outcome, or I tried to control the situation so that somebody else wouldn't see that I had totally jacked up. I can tell you from experience that those are the things that haunt your mind. In our minds, whenever we go back to our darkest moments, often it's just our own screw-ups. It's our own moments of pride or our own moments of needing to control or work the system or alter the outcome somehow when we should have trusted that the Lord could handle it. Am I right? The thing I have realized is that it is impossible to be self-focused and Christ-centered. You can't do it. You can't serve two masters. You can't serve yourself and Christ. I would love to tell you that this story has a happy ending. Unfortunately, it does not have a happy ending. David does get that letter to Joab, and Joab follows the orders of his king, and he sends Uriah to the front, and Uriah is killed. All because David made a mistake. David and Bathsheba had an affair. At the very end of the chapter, after Uriah is killed, it says in the last verse, it says, after a time of mourning was over, David had Bathsheba brought to his house, and she became his wife, and she bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. Yeah, of course it did. Can you imagine the grief the Lord sees when he sees us manipulate and try to control things, and how it hurts his children? I think the question this begets, which I've gotten to say begets now twice. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm simpled out. I think the question that it begets is what do we do? What do we do in that compulsion? What do we do with those times where we want to control things and we know we shouldn't? What do we do with those times where we have manipulated a situation or we have manipulated someone else? And I just feel the Lord saying to me, stop. Just stop. Stop trying to control and stop trying to manipulate everything. Maybe, I don't know, turn it over to me and see if I can handle it. And I think the problem with that is that when we stop trying to control things, it's going to feel like we're just naked. I mean, naked as a jaybird is what I would say when my kids were running around in their diapers. It's going to feel naked as a jaybird for some of us. And myself included, y'all. I mean, this has bumped up against so many ways that I control things. I will unapologetically tell you that manipulation is not something that, when I say that I don't struggle with manipulation, it's not that I'm never tempted to manipulate situations, and I'm never tempted to control things because like I've told y'all, I'm a control freak. But manipulation is something that if you have ever been the recipient, or you've been on the other end of that manipulation at the expense of a manipulative person, it's going to change the way you see it. And I can tell you, just in a raw, honest moment, like, there is nothing that fires me up more than manipulative people. I know we're not supposed to be judgmental people. I know we're not supposed to be because we all do it to a certain degree, but you know what I'm talking about. There are people who walk through this life with a bent toward manipulation. That's the way they get what they want. It's the way that they roll. And manipulation is often subversive. It's devious. It's sneaky. Just like David saying, "Hey, I just wanted you to come home, and here's some food and wine, and here, why don't you go home for a few days?" That's devious, and that's manipulation. And if that's something you struggle with, you and Jesus need to get together and talk, because it's gonna get worse. It's never gonna get better. But the bigger problem of that is that if you have been on the receiving end of that, you have quickly realized that manipulation and being manipulated destroys trust. And let me just stop there. Manipulation destroys. It destroyed Uriah's life. Manipulation destroys. It destroys relationships. It destroys trust. I cannot emphasize that enough, that manipulating other people destroys everything you have worked to establish with someone else. I think that's why sometimes adult parent-child relationships struggle, is because when you are raising a kiddo and they are under your control when they are small, it's easy because you have control over them. One of my favorite stories is that when my daughter was 2 and we were going to potty train, it was the summer that she was between 2 and 3. It was the summer, and I bought her dresses because I thought wearing dresses would make it super easy for her to pull her panties up and down whenever she was going to go potty. And I was trying to make it easy on her and me. That summer was the summer that she decided that she no longer wanted to wear dresses. And that is also the point where I realized that my child has a mind of her own, and she did not want to wear dresses anymore. And I had the choice of, it was going to make, going back to the potty training thing, it was going to make my life so much easier, and her life too, I thought, for us to just be able to pull things up and down real fast, and that way we could potty train easier. And I had to decide, am I going to continue to control this, or am I going to let her have her way? And that is that is parenting in a nutshell. If I get real with it, is that we have decisions along the way of, am I going to control them? And am I going to exert my power and influence? I could have forced her to wear those dresses all summer, when she had clearly, and she was very verbal. I mean, that kid came out of the womb pretty much talking full sentences. She has given me a run for my money since the day she was born, and I would not have her any other way. God made her so exquisitely, beautifully. And although I wanted her to wear the dresses because it would have made my life so much easier, I had to let it go. And I will fully confess, there have been times where I have fought her tooth and nail on things. But I never want to destroy my relationship with her, especially over something so dumb as wearing dresses. We have had don't get me wrong, we have had our share of coming togethers and falling aparts and coming together again. But as she has grown up, and as my son has grown up too, we have to make the decision to let our children become the adults that God intended them to be, with their talents and their gifts and their minds, their opinions. Heaven forbid our children have different opinions than we do. Now, granted, we are called to parent them and raise them up, and do not think for 1 minute that I have shirked that. But there is a fine line, especially now that she is an adult. I cannot manipulate her into doing what I want. I can't manipulate her into coming home for holidays, or manipulate her into spending time with us. Because at the end of the day, if I manipulate and conjure that and create an environment where she has to be there, the only thing that's going to happen eventually is that if she can't see it now, she will, and she will resent me for it. We cannot manipulate people in relationships. If we want them to trust us, if we want them to want relationship with us, we cannot manipulate them. And I know that I just kind of went on a sidetrack here, but I think that that's so important. Somebody needs to hear that. We have got to take care and nurture relationships. And I will just tell you this. Anytime we are manipulative or controlling in a relationship, It is flat out exhausting. I told you earlier that our need to control things requires more fuel and more fuel and more energy and more ideas and more ways that we can cover things up or more ways that we can keep that control. It is exhausting to hold on to all of that control. And if you are only focused on the controlling part of like controlling the things that you want to make sure that they happen, make sure that it's this way, or make sure that your children do this, or make sure that your husband does that, you are going to be so exhausted and you will not be able to see anything else except for your need. The end. How much are you missing out on because of your need to control? And I told you, you're probably gonna feel a little naked if you stop trying to control everything. And your people around your house, y'all, they may start looking at you like, have you had a stroke? Are you crazy? Like, is this a body double or an AI generated image? I mean, they may ask you some questions like, if you decide, like, because that's the thing, we've got to come to this place where we have to decide, okay, am I going to keep controlling everything? And maybe the Lord's going to keep me in this series talking about control until we finally decide to lay it down. I have a sneaky feeling that that's part of this, is he is just asking us to lay down our selfish needs to control. And as we grow up in the body of Christ, as we become more mature believers, I think we're going to find peace, finally, if we would just stop and just let it be what it is. Stop trying to hide the past that you're so afraid somebody's going to find out about. Stop trying to cover up your insecurities about your body or who you are or your education or the things that you have so deeply felt inadequate about for years. What if you stopped trying to make your husband be somebody he's really not? And it's going to feel really, really weird when you stop. And like I said, your family may look at you like you're a little crazy. Something's happened to you. But how much more could you do with your life if you weren't spending the energy you're spending trying to control everything? Just think about all the things you could be doing. Fun things. I don't know where this meets you, honestly, and I can't see your face, and I wish I could. We may have to make that happen. I would love to see some of your faces. Just be able to talk to you. Do you know how awesome? Okay, maybe we need to make that happen. There's a verse in Luke 1. It's Luke 1:45, and it says, "Blessed is she who believed that the Lord would fulfill his promises to her." Blessed is she who believed that the Lord would fulfill his promises to her. The Lord holds so much for each of our lives. He does. He has not forgotten you. He has not overlooked you. If you're controlling or manipulating because you're afraid that the Lord is not going to show up, sweet friend, He has not forgotten you. He has not abandoned you. Even if it's quiet or even if it's not going the way you thought it would, there's no way you're living your life at peace and you have peace like overflowing in you if you were trying to control or manipulate things. There's no way. But when I read Luke 145, there's just a sense of peace that comes over me that says, you trust me, you gonna have peace. You trust me, you don't have to manipulate. If you trust me, then you're going to let go of that control. You're going to be able to let go of the things that you have been holding on to so tightly. Some of you have been gripping, white knuckling your way through life for decades. Your fingers are going to be real stiff when you start to let go. But you can do it. I believe in you. I want you to have peace. I want you to trust that the Lord will fulfill his promises to you. I like being able to give you an assignment because I think that this is where the rubber meets the road, where we begin to spend time with the Lord. And I want to encourage you, go back and reread 2 Samuel 11, read through that whole thing in your private time and let it soak in, like all of the ways that David took things into his own hands. Look at all the ways that he tried to manipulate Uriah, the way he tried to manipulate the situation, all of the ways that manipulation just cascaded and changed the trajectory of things. And so do that. There's that. The other thing I want you to do is I want you in your journal or in a note on your phone to just write down the moments where you are realizing that manipulation or you are tempted to manipulate. And I want you to take those straight to God and say, what do I do with this? What do I do? How in the world do I handle this? My flesh would like to handle this. My flesh would like to interfere in how this is going to go down. But Lord, your Spirit is how I want to operate in the Spirit. How do I do this, Lord? How do I trust you? How do I give up the reins on this when I am scared to death and I don't know how to do things when I'm not controlling them? You can do this. Take those things to the Lord. Write them down in your journal. Let the Lord I think writing it is a good thing to do just because I think it makes it tangible. When it's up here in my brain, y'all, that's like in the metaverse or something. I don't know what you want to call it. It's up there. It's not real until I write it down. When I write it down, it's real. So I don't know if that's you, if that helps you, but write it down somewhere. And then watch and then say, God, I want you to handle this. I am not going to do this anymore. This thing that I've always been doing here, I ain't doing it anymore. I'm going to let you handle this one. And then watch what he does. And then come back next week. Then let's go back next week and let's say, okay, look at all of the ways the Lord has met you and you didn't have to manipulate a darn thing. Okay, let's do that. All right. Okay, I'm going to get us out of here. We have gone a little bit longer than we normally do, y'all. Thanks for sticking in here with me. But I want to pray and then I'll close out. Lord, thank you. Good gosh. Lord, you are just so dang gracious to us. And meet us in the middle of our messiest, most manipulative selves that we are at times. Father, help us to lay down that need to manipulate, that need to control and interfere or get our way. Father, mature the areas in us that are selfish and help expose the lies that we have told ourselves and other people. Lord, I know that you can meet us and handle anything. You are big enough, Lord. You are big enough. You are strong enough. You are mighty. And it is in you we find our strength and we find our peace and we find our comfort. God, come into these places. Teach us. You know exactly the hearts and minds of every person listening to this. So come in and make yourself at home. Lord, we open ourselves up to you and we say, do with us what you want. Make us into the people you want us to become. Even if we have been liars and manipulators, Lord, let us become people who live according to your truth. It is never too late, Lord. And we turn to you today. We say, forgive us for these places and help us move and walk and operate in truth, and in light. It is in your Son's name I pray. Amen. It is a joy and an honor to spend time with you guys each week. And so I do not take that for granted. Thank you for being here. And good Lord willing, I will see you next week.